Hey, how you doing? Today, Pizza Hut. Pan pizza. Let's see what we got here. Pepperoni. I like it. Yeah. I'll stash that away for later. Oh, and of course, my iced tea. Pizza Hut. What can you say? They always make decent pizza. Oh, so this. In fact, it is an automobile engine valve. And it was made at Manly Valve, where I used to work quite a while back. They're not in business anymore. They went out probably, I don't know, 20 years ago at least. Maybe more like 25. I didn't stay there. I wasn't there at the time. So I don't know exactly when they went out. I worked there for maybe 2 years, something like that. And that's where the company manufactured these automobile engine valves. It was a decent job. I was in maintenance at the time. So I did machine repairs and stuff like that. It was pretty decent hours, unusual, because like I got up at 4:30 in the morning to head in there. So if I was up at 4:30 in the morning, get ready by 5, something like that. But I didn't live far from the factory at the time. It probably only took me 10 minutes to get to work. That's if I drove straight there. Most of the time I would stop on the way. There was a coffee shop about halfway in between my place and the company. So I would normally stop there, get a cup of coffee, have a donut or so. And I'd still get to work. If I had to start by 6 o'clock, let's say I clocked in at 6, because it used to be 6 until 2:30 in the afternoon was the shift, which was nice because getting off work at 2:30 in the afternoon leaves you a good amount of time during the day to do your running around and work on some projects or something, even during the work week. And I was always doing projects. I had something at the house I'd be working on. I could stop on the way home, hit a hardware store, grab some material up that I needed, and head back and get a couple of hours of work done on the house. But like I was saying, stopping for coffee on the way in, that's usually what I would do. And I would still get to work a half hour or so before it was time to clock in. And that's what a lot of the people did. Let's say we had maybe 75 total employees at that place. Well, 50 or 60 of them probably would be there about a half an hour early. And there was a break room, like it had some microwave and maybe a refrigerator or so where you could put your lunch and stuff. It didn't have a cafeteria, but it had like a break room that was pretty sizable. And by a half hour before work started, there would be about 50 of us probably sitting in that little lunchroom just talking. It was a sort of a pretty solid community of the people, because a lot of those guys had worked there for 20, 30 years. So they had known each other all that time. So everybody was kind of close knit. Now, I wasn't there, but maybe a year, maybe 2 years. So I got to know them rapidly, but everybody would be sitting there in that lunchroom talking about everything, like what their projects on their house was doing, what their family was doing, cars that they owned, what they had to do to their car or their house, whatever. And then once it got to be at least 10 till 6, maybe 5 till 6, everybody would start lining up to clock in. So there was a time clock on the wall, and it had these little shelves with these spots in it for your time card. So you would just jump in the line when it had gotten down part way, grab your time card out of there, hit the time clock, put your time card back in the slot, and off to work you go. Well, there was about 4 or 5 of us in maintenance. That was all the bigger the maintenance shop was. Like 2 mechanical guys and probably 2 to 3 electrical guys. Like I said, it wasn't a very big shop. But there was probably 10 or 15 Cincinnati grinders and other machines too. We had a press where they would heat up the steel slags. They'd run them through an induction heater, heat them up, and start rolling them out to get to be like the size of this shaft. And then they would put them in the grinders to finish this. So it's close tolerances on valve shaft. So, dirty, but effective. The grinders, uh, you've probably seen them before, the big grinding wheel and then the other wheel, and you would sit the part in there and it would grind it. Well, the coolant would be spraying on the valve as it's grinding. So you would always end up with coolant around the machine too. And the operators did a decent job of keeping the area clean and so it wasn't wet. They would throw the cat litter, oil dry stuff, down around and keep it pretty well soaked up. But the typical look of a machine shop, during that time frame, especially, there was always stuff on the machine and on the floors and stuff like that. But as long as it wasn't a slip hazard, throw the kitty litter down and keep it so it's not wet, that you're not going to slip. And of course, whenever they had trouble then with the machines, whatever section of the shop they were working in, they would just walk over to the maintenance area because it was located like in the center of the building. They would just walk over to the maintenance shop and go, "Hey, I got this problem with this over here. I take a look at it, and I need to get this fixed." It wasn't a real technical system of reporting trouble calls or anything. Another thing I remember about that shop was about 11:30. They would always have the roach coach show up outside, just outside the front doors. So a lot of times, maybe half of the time, I wouldn't have packed a lunch or anything. So just got to the roach coach and grabbed they had hamburgers, they had hot dogs, French fries were always available there, and different snack stuff. Like the guy on the truck, he would sell bags of chips, something like that. So you could get a cheeseburger and a bag of chips, something like, for $1.50 at the time, something like that. So it was handy that he was always out there and always at 11:30. Like it was a routine every day. So if I did pack a lunch, okay, fine. But if I didn't, I knew he'd be out there too. So I always did like pizza. So say we had lunch then at like 11:30, whether you made your lunch or went out to the Roach Coach, either way. You had a half hour. That's why we worked from 6 till 2:30, because there was like two breaks during the day and also the lunch break. So if you took 20 minutes for your lunch, okay, big deal. The other 10 minutes you'd be on break in the morning getting coffee or whatever. But once it got to be 2:30, now it's getting to where you're clocking out at the time clock with your time card out of the slot, hit the machine, put it back in there. But it was sort of a, a manually physical job too, so you would be getting dirty during the day. I was always covered with oil and grease and stuff like that. Well, in the restroom, we had the typical large round sink, and it had like a cylinder up in the center of it, and water would shoot out around the outside of this big circle. And you would step on that metal push pedal that went around the base of the wash basin. But they always had good soap, like the powdered soap. You would just push on the little pedestal of the thing, and it would dispense the powdered soap. And very gritty, like sandpaper. I guess there was sand in it, but that stuff worked pretty good. It would take the grease and oil and stuff off, get cleaned up before you got and get in your car. But it definitely was more physical work than later on in my career when I started doing more programming and stuff like that. It was fun. I enjoyed when you go up to a machine and it's broke, the operator tells you what's wrong, troubleshoot it, repair it. Working with your hands like that, it's pretty satisfying to know, oh, just 25 minutes ago or whatever, this thing was broke, it wouldn't run. Now, tore this thing apart, fixed it, and the guy's back up and running. It's nice to have that feeling that, yeah, you're accomplishing something, sort of like a craftsmanship feeling. Whereas with programming, later on, my career got to probably 90 or 95% was programming. So you didn't work with your hands as much. You'd be working more or less on a computer, at the machine, just doing programming. That wasn't as great for personal satisfaction as like physically repairing a machine, like pulling a motor and a pump off of it and rebuilding it and putting it back on. it was different because then when you're programming, you're watching the machine and you're figuring out how to make it do something a better way or a faster way, but you're just programming on the laptop because you're hooked up to a PLC in the machine and you're making changes to the machine itself. It was a lot different than when you're working on the machine physically with your hands and tools to make the repair itself. Just the way the job evolved over time, so it was a lot different. But it takes both those types of trades to produce stuff today, so you got to be able to know both of them. Well, that's it for that pizza. So, until the next time, take care of yourself, and I'll see you later.